Hello, and my name is Pete Rushmer, and I'm your host today of A Half Dozen Things podcast. A Half Dozen Things is a podcast for business owners just like you. Whether you're an underdog hungry for success, or you're already smashing it but want to continue to level up, we are here each week for you to get insight and learning from the very best in the business. No fluff, no BS, and no self-proclaimed gurus talking about how easy business or life is.
Big subject of driver retention and the 6 or half dozen things which are absolutely vital in retaining the best quality drivers for your business. Now, I think this is something which is a hidden cost. It's a hidden level of profitability for the operators that are getting it right, because certainly the operators that are keeping, retaining and employing the best drivers and keeping them in the business are going to be more profitable than those that don't manage to keep hold of drivers. So I think this is absolutely vital, gents, don't you?
Absolutely, yeah.
It's a really big thing. So our half dozen things are, the first one's about respect. The second, we're going to talk about remuneration. We're then going to talk about, controversially, covering of driver costs. We're then going to look about kit and equipment and level of investment. We're going to look at management capability, and we're also going to look at culture as well. And that's not that stinky stuff that people put in a petri dish when they're scientists. So let's kick it off with respect. This is something you see regularly on the Facebook groups, and you hear from drivers on Driver CPC about getting a lack of respect. I'm going to bring you first in on this, Jamie, as a ex steering wheel attendant yourself.
Yeah.
Talk to me about respect for drivers.
It's massive, isn't it? People want that respect. Drivers work hard, don't they? They want a bit of respect for what they've done. It's not an easy job, you say steering wheel attendant, there's a lot that goes with that, isn't there?
I was going to say that was me joking.
Yeah.
That was me joking. Just for the avoidance of that, before there's like burning effigies of me.
The irony of respect when you come out with that. Drivers work out. They want that respect, and granted, it should be a two-way thing as well. I think drivers should respect the management if
that's a good point.
They're doing their thing. But as we talk about driver retention, I think getting the respect from your peers above you goes a long way. People feel like they're doing a good job, and they want to do a good job again, don't they? If they get that respect, and they want to stay there. If you're working for someone, you're doing 12, 15-hour shifts, and you feel like you're just a number, well, then you can go anywhere and do that, can't you? You're going to go elsewhere. What about you, Mike? What do you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I got a little bit of an anecdotal story with this one. I was doing a job a little while ago, and met a driver who'd been there an awful long time, and he said, he said that. I said, what's changed in the job over the last few years? And he said, well, it's fact now, isn't it? The job's fact. He was a South London boy. He was,
we never got it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Glad you cleared that up.
Yeah. So I'm not quite sure whether that was a technical management term that is used on management training. But I said, well, give me an example. Why do you think it's fact? And he said, my relationship with my manager, he said, I walk in the door, it's a porter cabin, and he said, I'll go to collect my keys and me paperwork and what have you. He says, my entire interaction with my manager is as the glass door slides open, I get thrust a set of keys and a lot of paperwork, and then the glass door gets closed again. And that's not really giving the driver very much respect, is it really?
No, not whatsoever. I've heard worse stories now where the drivers don't really know their transport
is. Yeah.
So there's no respect there, is there?
No, and I think it's just a question of just a bit of common humanity, but talking to somebody, asking them how they are, and how the wife and kids is, and she left me 3 weeks ago for the milkman or whatever. But you've got to be careful. But it's knowing those kind of things.
It does go
a
long way to a driver, doesn't it? If someone's interested in the driver, they're going to feel part of that team and want to stay part of that team.
Valued, don't they? Yeah.
Feel valued for what they do. It's a good way.
Can't help saying this word without thinking a bit of Aretha Franklin. But what do you think about respect, then, Pete?
I was going to say, there's a few things running through my head there. Hearing you two chat, I'm sure there was a joke in there, something about managers. So managers should always know who the spouses and children's names of their team members. So I was just about to ask you how Sandra was, and you how Deborah was, and whether little.
Well, it's actually Katie's birthday tomorrow.
Little Cassandra, the child, is okay. Yeah. No. Anyway, sorry, I'll make a bit of a joke because neither of the guys' wives are those names.
My wife will be thinking now, who's this?
That?
Yeah.
Exactly. But to be fair, that old adage doesn't really work with me. I can just about stretch to spouses, but I tend to. I haven't got 4 kids, and trying to remember their birthdays.
I don't remember my own kids' names. Sometimes,
I struggle with kids' names. So Jamie, I know your wife's called Karen, and I know Mike's partner's called Katie, and they're both K's, by the way, which is very useful for me to remember. But I do struggle to remember kids' names. But anyway, I think I totally fucking digress. Respect, yeah. So respect is, I think it's vitally important to show that level of humility and I think understanding, a level of understanding and empathy with drivers. We tend to go back to that big E word all the time, don't we? Empathy. Drivers want to feel respected. To be able to make them feel respected, a transport manager or a leader needs to show empathy to be able to demonstrate that they have a level of understanding of what goes on a day-to-day basis and some of the challenges drivers face. It includes backing them up when shit hits the fan as well, doesn't it? So I think it's absolutely vital. I reckon we're going to move on to the second one because I'm conscious we're going to start to get sort of muddied up. We're going to look at management capability and culture a bit later, and if I go too far, I'll start to muddy the water with that. So I'm going to move on to the brass tacks, and I certainly know from when this guy came to join us, he knows how to negotiate a good deal. So over to you, Mike. Talk to me. Over to you. Tell me about cash and remuneration. Why that's and when we talk about remuneration, because it isn't always just about cash, is it? It's also about the holiday and pension and those sorts of things. So.
The value is not just cash, is it? But a driver is like everybody else. Have got bills to pay. We've got mortgages to pay and all the rest of the things that come with good things that come with life. And when you go to Tesco's and you go to the cashier, they want to take money off you. They're not going to do it. They're not going to be interested that you love your job and that you love your place you work for. You're going to have to find the pound notes to pay for it. So at the end of the day, we have to be, I suppose, as hauliers, as operators, we have to be competitive in the market, in the jobs, in the wages. I suppose again that works both ways though. We used to find drivers would go down the road for 50p an hour more, and you think, well, really, you've been here 12 years, you're a part of the furniture, and you're just going to work for somebody else for 50p an hour, and you find that 6 months down the line they come back to you. Why do they come back to you? Because they haven't been treated in the same, going back to the respect thing. So, but it is important. We do have to find the value of the drivers, and I think what we've got to do as professionals, transport managers, operators, we've got to test the market and know what the sort of local pay rates are, and be competitive. Otherwise, people are going to feel undervalued in that respect. But I suppose the other side of the coin is don't get carried away by the current situation. And I see some hauliers have paid massive pay rises, and that's great. But is it sustainable? But you're a businessman. You know that it's not always sustainable to pay those kind of rates. That's why me and Jamie work for the love.
That was right back at that one, wasn't it? I felt that. Jamie, what do you reckon?
It's interesting what Mike said about the drivers moving for 50p more.
I thought it was about something else for a minute.
It was all interesting, but I see it quite a bit when we're out and about drivers moving for, like you say, 50p more. With the driver shortage, hauliers were having to put up their rates, try and keep people, and there was a lot of movement of drivers back then. But
churn, I believe they call it. It's a horrible word, isn't it? Churn.
But people see it, don't they? You see a job advertised, and why wouldn't a driver think, well, hang on a minute, that's £1 an hour more? Give it a go. They've got bills to pay. However, that's not the be all and end all, is it? No, driver retention. If you enjoy where you are and you've been respected. Some companies have got that family feel.
I've worked with a family haulier, and it's definitely, they weren't very well paid in terms of the drivers, but there was that core of drivers. There was a churn. We had a massive problem with churn, but the core of drivers, some of them have been there donkey's years. Literally, and some of them had even been father and son. Literally generations had worked there. And that's because they were genuinely feeling a part of the community, a part of the. So the money wasn't everything for them, but it's a tricky one to get. It's a tricky balance to make, isn't it? Everybody around here, everybody could where we're based down in Peterborough, everybody could tell you here who the good payers are. Oh, they're good payers. Oh, I'd like to get a job there, you know. But is that it? Is that the be all and end all of it? I don't know.
Yeah, I think when we really look at what people are motivated by, people are motivated by connection and empathy. So we're looking at like the recognition side of stuff. People do need to be paid the right money, but they want a level of, you know, it's sort of other things come first. So I think cash and remuneration is really, really important. But I think you can get, people won't move for 50p or £1 an hour if they feel well respected, well looked after. If you can tick all of the other boxes, which is just part of running a tight ship, being a good business. I think you can get away with, not get away with, that's the wrong terminology, but I think it's the arseholes that have to, I call it the arsehole tax. Right, so the companies that have to pay the top money to get people to work for them, it is like an arsehole tax. And I think that's the way people should be looking at it. I think it's important to pay a level which is competitive, like you say, but certainly there's companies out there that are having to pay bonuses to retain people, to get people to stay. They've got churn, which, like you say, is not a great word for people, but essentially they're paying the price for being knobheads to work for, basically.
It'd be interesting to hear from people, and I don't know what you two think, but I'm not convinced that the churn, that's a lovely word, the churn is any less for those companies around here that we know that pay really top dollar. I still think the churn is the same. You know, it'd be interesting to see. I don't know. I've nothing to back that up.
It would be very interesting to see the data, and I don't think many operators actually calculate the data. Yeah. And I think if you asked an operator what's the cost of acquisition for a new driver, I don't think many would be able to tell you. But actually, that's a really vital metric: is what's the cost of acquisition versus the cost of retention. Yeah. And therefore, if you've got a high cost of acquisition, why not invest a little bit more in your retention?
Yeah, I know from you're a marketing guru, Pete, but from a marketing point of view, I read somewhere that it costs 7 times more to get a new customer than it does to retain an existing customer. And I suppose if you turn that on its head with drivers, it's the same thing, isn't it, really?
There's a lot of hidden costs with that as well.
A lot of hidden costs, yeah.
Not only have you got the cost of training them up, they're not going to be as efficient as a driver that's been with you 20 years out there that knows the job inside out.
And sometimes you can't put a price. It's difficult to put a price on that.
No, definitely you can't, can you? Because some people take 3 weeks perhaps to get up to speed, others might take months. Yeah. Depending on the job, especially.
Absolutely.
I'm going to come back to you because this is probably one of the most contentious ones of the 6, Mike, and it was certainly your suggestion. I think it's a really, really valid one, and that's around. So not just, you know, we've been talking for the second area around cash and remuneration, but the third one we talked about the covering of costs, and I've put particularly their driver CPC, for example. I've got quite passionate views about that as well. So I'm interested to hear a bit more about. What does that mean for you?
Yeah, I just think that when we look at our the average age of a driver in this country is evidently 56, white male. That's the statistic. The what do they call it? That's the typical demographic of a driver is 56 white male. So we've got an ageing workforce. We know that. We've known that for years. We have made strides to get new people into the industry, and that's ongoing, and we know all about that now. So, but I've got a belief that 75 is the new 65. And, you know, people will work longer, and, you know, they're having to in lots of cases because they're not picking the pension up until a little bit later on. But when you think of the costs of staying a driver, you've got CPC costs, you've got a medical, particularly when you get to 65, you know, and that's every year, and that's quite a cost. Would the drivers feel better valued if the company, and I know a lot of companies do this already, but if the company said, you know what, look, tell you what, we're going to cover the cost. We're going to pay you to do it. We're going to pay for your CPC. We're going to pay you to do the CPC. We're going to put some food on for you if we do it in our place. We're going to treat you with a bit of respect again. So, you know, what are your thoughts on that then, guys? What do you think? Would that be something that operators should probably be looking at doing now? And
I think definitely, yeah. With the CPC, the training, like you say, putting a bit of food on, it goes a long way, doesn't it?
It does.
Like you talk about respect, people feel respected, wanted. It's a massive cost, like you say, renewing a medical every year, licence renewals, it's all cost, isn't it?
Absolutely, you've got your CPC, you've got your licence renewal, you've got your medical, you've got your digicard. All it's all right to say 19 quid, but 19 quid is 19 quid. So that might go a long way. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's lots of things to think about here. I think certainly from an operator's point of view, if you want to be a compliant operator, it's good to value your driver CPC program. I think it demonstrates that you value it. If you expect drivers to pay for their own driver CPC, that shows that you don't value it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of got the likewise challenge here. And then, so I'm quite firm on this, and it's probably a little bit abrasive, because largely speaking, most of the driver CPC that occurs or that we have is an operator will pay for the cost of it, but drivers turn up on their own time because it's for their licence. And I actually think that we, as an industry, I think it kind of makes the industry look far less attractive than many other businesses, because most other businesses, workplace training will take place during work time.
During the working hours,
and people are paid to be
Interestingly,
there.
I've seen job adverts for drivers now with paid CPC.
Wow.
Is actually on the advert. So
Yeah.
people do recognise that.
That's fantastic. Well, it's good that it's good that they recognise that. That's a really interesting point.
I think if CPC is now here to stay, which it is, I do think we need to move away from that Saturday own time CPC, because it creates ill feeling, it creates a bad environment. I understand that for many it's the necessity, and that operators may deem that they're not profitable enough to allow drivers off the road and they have lost productivity from a driver for them to be able to do driver CPC. But if we know about it in advance and we're planned well enough in advance, I think that's probably a big perk for a driver, that they're going to get paid, not only their CPC paid, but also be paid to attend it. I think, and literally actions speak louder than words when it comes to going back to the respect. That shows that level of, do you know what, we respect your time, we respect your effort, we're going to put you through the drive CPC. I think that will show a level of commitment to people as well.
And it also, it's a benefit for the operator, because the driver is going to be more focused and switched on in that environment, rather than having to use his Saturday up to go and do something. Although it is for his benefit as well, but if he's getting it paid and
absolutely,
it's going to be more motivated to do it.
And just another thought, and this we never mean these to be plugs, but if you as an operator, if you approach a training provider and ask that training provider to put together a bespoke course, you'll kill two birds in one stone here. Not only will be able to put together something that is really relevant to the guys and girls that work for you, and looking at your issues, but when they start seeing your logo on presentations and on the materials that we hand out during a CPC course, they're going to think, well, my operator, the person I work for is invested in this, and they've paid money for this, and therefore it's got to be of value. And without giving too many trade secrets away, I've just seen presentations that are standard presentations. All we've done is put on a bit of logos and a couple of pictures, and all of a sudden it becomes very personal, and they can relate to that, and I think that works really well, doesn't it, in the industry? So
yeah, no, absolutely agree. I think there's something, and just putting it out there, some people will be a flat out no, but I think it's really worth considering if you're struggling for driver retention and you want to set up a new scheme. That is something to absolutely consider, covering the cost of medical, covering the cost of CPC, and paying drivers to attend to attend during work time. I think that is a real consideration. Definitely. As well as looking at, and I think things like that, so you'd look at things like private medical care. I think that's, if you start looking at those perks, they're great, and I think they'd go a long way too. If you've got the pot of cash to be able to do this stuff, the paid eye tests and stuff like that, where you can claim the vouchers for dental and eye care and things like that, I think all of those go to help some consideration. But actually, I think it's so far out there against what other people are doing. Something like paid for CPC during work time, I think, would just be a really, really big, benefit.
I would give you that edge, competitive edge, because it's a competitive market.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. Okay, brilliant. So the fourth area then, now that I've turned all of the business owning operators off, they're now no longer listening, because they totally disagree with my point of view. We're never booking CPC with Flagship again. Listen to them chuntering on. I respect everyone for how they go about doing their CPC. I'm just going to put that out there. I just think it's worth a consideration for sure before I shoot my business in the foot.
And as trainers, it's it doesn't. For me, I'll put the effort in, and Jamie is the same, and Andy. We will all put the effort in, irrespective of who's paying for it. So
yeah, absolutely. We'll always give 100%, and it doesn't really matter. But I think all around, I think what we can categorically say is if driver CPC is delivered on a weekday during work time in a training room, the chances of the retention of the quality of impact and the input that drivers will get from that course is far outweighed against them coming on a Saturday tired in their own time. Their minds are on other stuff. They want to be watching the football. They want to be watching the rugby. They want to get out of there as soon as they can. And actually, if it was trialled as what we thought previously, I think a lot more effort would go into it, definitely. For sure. Yeah. Anyway.
Hi, it's Pete from Flagship Partners. We're really proud to sponsor a Half Dozen Things podcast. At Flagship Partners, we take road safety really seriously, and we're your road safety partnership. We help transport companies with compliance and training across their businesses, including first aid, driver CPC, and other transport management services. So if you're FORS accredited or you want to improve your operator compliance risk score, give Flagship Partners a call today.
Let's move on to the fourth area, which is equipment. So, Jamie, I'm going to come to you first, mate. What's the impact of having nice quality equipment to use?
Well, I would say this doesn't affect everyone. Not everyone's driven by how nice a truck they drive, but it does go a long way for different drivers. Some of the operators we work for, they have beautiful trucks, don't they? And their drivers are so passionate about those trucks. So that's their core focus. They want to work for that haulier because they have the best trucks. People want a Scania V8. Some drivers, they love it, absolutely love it. Even the make of trucks, some people. I've been in a transport
office. There's some snobbery, isn't there?
There is. I've been in a transport office. Why do I have to drive the MAN or the Volvo or I want this truck? And people stay for that thing. There's certain drivers that want the best equipment. It might even be a microwave in the truck. If you're trapping away a week.
Yeah, absolutely.
The little things like that go a long way. And new trucks, just some people don't want to go to work in a 10-year-old truck. You spend a lot of time in that vehicle, don't you?
You do, and I think we're still in an industry. That's difficult to say. In an industry, which is where the people who are involved in that industry are actually interested in it. They are interested. You've only got to look. I'm not saying this is not for everybody, but you've only got to look at events like Truckfest and that kind of thing, and see the level of engagement. If you work for a carpet factory, I'm sure that if there was an annual carpet factory fair, that you wouldn't find the same level of engagement. So, no disrespect to carpet workers, but it is an industry where people,
I don't think there's many of them.
We're going to get
a strongly worded letter.
I was trying to think something a safe industry there.
Mike, I don't like the way you spoke about carpet munching.
There is nothing wrong. Nothing wrong with that. So there is a thing.
A vehicle's quite emotive.
Absolutely,
isn't it? Don't get me wrong. I love a nice carpet, but a vehicle is emotive.
It's a very emotive subject. But funny you should say that about there's a well-known local haulier that I did work for a while around here, and they're probably slightly different now. They've become a massive thing, but they were well known for their kit, but they're also well known for their quite low pay. But their kit was lovely. It's still is, some of it is very nice. But they had half a fleet Scania, half a fleet Volvo. But there was even snobbery between the two sets of drivers. It was like the Scania drivers would never be seen talking to the Volvo drivers, and it was like what? What other industry is that happening?
I love some brand snobbery.
There is people say, I can't drive that truck, it hurts my back. These companies spend thousands and thousands on developing these seats. And they have a seat can move in so many places in a truck, can't it? I wonder how many operators actually. I know this is not. I learnt this the hard way, but I know lots of operators will probably not consider this as an option. But how many of them consult with the drivers when they come to change their vehicles? And how all right, but it could be a difficult one to get out of if they suddenly come up with a list of wants. But how many of them actually just ask the drivers? How do you get on with that? How do you get on? And again, to quote another guy in another family firm I worked for, they were very interested in that, and that was hugely important for the drivers. It works another way as well, and it's going a bit off topic, but if a driver likes his vehicle, he's going to look after it.
He's going to look after it. Absolutely.
So it's a benefit to the. I know we're talking about retention, but there's also a benefit to the operator.
So there's that's a whole other thing around. what the benefit of investing in all the gear and stuff, and people looking after their vehicles and having that.
But that's another thing with equipment and retention. If people are allowed to add these like little bits of spec, a light bar, etc., it keeps the driver, and someone's going to look after your vehicle.
It's a big debate, that, isn't it? It's a
massive,
big debate,
isn't it? If I was the one paying for it, I'd probably be on the other side of the fence. But
some companies I work with are very relaxed around letting the drivers make it their own, because when they make it their own, they look after them. And then there's also that thing of like standardisation, no arguments, that kind of thing. It's a big it's a balance. I think it based on size of fleet. I think is how feasible that opportunity is.
Just a very quick story on that, and Pete doesn't know this, but I was.
Should I be scared?
No, I was talking to my that court case it will go away. I was talking to my previous employer. I was talking to somebody from my previous employer. We were doing some work for them, and
look at him talking about the X on my podcast. Look at that.
Yeah, so you can't do this in front of the missus. So you kind of say, she said, what did it's just, sorry you left the organising. Why'd you leave? I said, I'll tell you why. I was really, really hacked off with when I had a company car, and it was a Volvo, and it's beautiful. I loved it to bits. Came to change. I understand it has to go back to the leasing company after a certain time. We normally would order a new car of our choosing. After all, we pay an awful lot of BIK tax for it.
It's not cheap.
And they said, no, because of COVID, we're not doing that anymore. You've got to have a cast off. Somebody who's unfortunately been made redundant, you've got to have this car. And that really hacked me off, it really hacked me off. And ended up on Pete's doorstep. So, but it's like something like that. Really, I know
it's the benefit you've lost.
Difficult, but I've still got in some people's eyes, a nice car. It's bloody red. I can't have a red car, Pompey fan, aren't I? So can't have a red car. But it's something simple like that, that sort of hacked me off.
He'd have hated that Fiesta van we had.
Yeah, he would have.
He would have hated that Postman Pat van we had. Yeah. I'll tell you what, the thing spent most of the time in the lay-by, mate, so don't worry about it.
It went very far.
It went very far. It spent more time in the garage, didn't it? But yeah, I think particularly a company car, I get what you're saying with the company car, because essentially you're having to invest personal money anyway. The benefit in kind cost
is massive,
on a car.
It's as much as buying it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you'd pick what you wanted if you bought it.
I wanted to pick what I wanted. Yeah, not what I was giving me as a hand-me-down.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, brill. Equipment. I think
it's massive for certain drivers, especially. I think some don't care, or say they don't care, but I think
they do.
General,
If you want the drivers to commit to looking after the vehicle, you need to give them nice bits of kit. And I think drivers want it to be well maintained as well, don't they? They want that
investment
in maintenance
too,
which is a whole other thing, isn't it? Right, so we're at 5 and 6 now. Let's move on to management capability or incapability. Not that I've got a dog in this fight or anything, but let's go to Chief Transport Manager Trainer himself, Mr. Vickers. Tell me a bit more about the importance of management capability.
Yeah, sometimes
when we talk about driver retention.
Yeah, we talk about the Transport Management Certificate of Professional Competence, but occasionally we have the Freudian slip, and it becomes out as Transport Manager Certificate of Professional Incompetence, doesn't it? So, what makes somebody a very compliant manager in terms of their role as described by Stat Doctory, as we love to refer back to, doesn't mean to say they're a good manager, does it? Just because they can do the job. So management capabilities, where do we go with that one then? What makes a manager capable? Coming back to that first point about respect and empathy, I think they go a long way to it. But what kind of you guys think? What is it that makes a good manager?
We spoke about it previously, I think, before the podcast. Communication.
Communication,
It frustrates drivers when they don't know what's going on. And part of that frustration that can roll over for someone wanting to leave, then, can't it? You can see your manager is incompetent. There's loads of sides of that, I suppose.
Incompetency, because There's an age-old argument, isn't there, that we've talked about in a previous podcast about driver. Does a transport manager need to be a driver? And I think we come to the conclusion that it's a great skill to have, but it's not maybe the most important one. The most important one is to have a little bit of empathy and a little bit of idea of what goes on with people. But what would you suggest, then, Pete? How do we overcome this? Because I've got to be honest, I think an awful lot of people in the industry probably aren't brilliant managers, if I've got to be honest.
No,
controversial.
And do you know? And I'm quite categorical, actually. The more I think about it, I was listening to a book the other day, and I can't remember which one it was, so I can't quote it. And normally I tend to quote from a book because that's what I do. But they were saying in the book, they were talking about connection, empathy, and challenge are the three key focuses for great leadership. Connection, empathy, and challenge. And it's about growing and developing people. It's about having connection with them and being able to understand the challenges they face and being able to help and support. Now, those things don't really go hand in hand with the compliance.
No, they don't. It's
kind of contrary to compliance, and I think that in itself is a challenge. That I think actually a transport manager's role was so heavily focused on complying with the regulations and what's involved in the safe running of a fleet, that actually that's often contradictory, and I think that's what's resulted in the waspy, impersonal, you're a driver, you're just, essentially the driver and the vehicle go hand in hand, and essentially a lot of operators just see them as assets. Yeah. And it's essentially just an asset. You are an asset. The only reason we've got you is because that vehicle won't fucking move itself.
Yeah. You're a resource. You're a resource.
And if that one can't do it, that one can. There's no
it's just just literally, the transport manager is only ever really dealing with the driver to talk about infringements or you need to work this period of time, but I need to be at home for this time, and there's just always this conflict around the role and around the driver, or it might be that there's lateness, or all of the things that cause challenge and conflict and problems, customer complaints, those kinds of things, and essentially the manager needs to be good enough to be able to rise above that and still deal with a human being.
We did speak about it in a previous podcast. I think it was about what makes a transport office happy. We did speak about it could be quite a negative environment. Like say,
it is quite a negative
I'm going to speak to my driver because he's done something wrong, rather than he's done something
punishment. Wrong all the time.
Because they don't always have time to praise the good, do they?
Yeah,
or even recognise that something good's fucking happened.
You're literally there to stop the bad things happening, and the very nature of doing that is addressing the bad things.
It's a difficult balance, because they as you said, Pete, they've got their heads in the compliance stuff. There's a lot to worry about, but the thing is, if you get that right, if you get that management right of the drivers, the compliance will follow, because they're working for you, not against you.
No, definitely.
You don't want them working against you, because that's that's where the compliance will start falling apart. So that it's an ever sort of decreasing circle, isn't it? But it's difficult to say what makes a good manager. It's difficult to sort of contextualise in one or two sentences, isn't it? But
absolutely. I think it's a myriad of stuff, isn't it? Essentially, from technical skills to what's a better word for softer skills? I hate the fucking word skills.
Softer skills.
It's just my go-to, isn't it?
Yeah. Interpersonal skills.
Interpersonal skills. How to be a good human being.
Yes.
For talking of which, I think that moves us on to the half dozen thing, which is around culture. So it's very closely related to management capability. And as part of culture, we can talk about that management capability. How do we create? Here's a really open question. Either of you can come in on that. How do we create a great culture in transport operators?
I think there's many ways you can do it, and there's many facets to culture, isn't there? Is it a good health and safety culture? Are we a compliant culture? Is it a happy culture?
Yeah.
Is it, there's so many, it's a bit like the management, there's so many things that can come into that. But communication and people knowing the expectations, there's just so many things that come into culture.
And it's like, are they... is this company? Are we ingrained with this company? Is it? Have we got this company's blood flowing through our brain? That's a bit of an old 70s cliche. But it is true, isn't it? It is how they develop that culture is really, really important.
It's not a quick thing.
It's not a quick thing. No, it develops over years and years, and that I think as an operator, as a company, you've got to look at where your USP is, if you like. And I've mentioned a couple of companies that I've worked for, family companies. So their USP was very much around. We're not trying to be a corporate giant who can bring with them their own set of culture, which is I had a strange thing really. I worked for a big American pharmaceutical company who had a very American culture, and it was great. It was a great place to work. And then I went and worked for a small family firm that had a different culture, but was equally as good. But they were opposites, but equally as good because they played to their strengths. There was no way that the giant conglomerate was going to foster this family feel because it couldn't. It was a huge organisation, but they had other strengths. So I suppose you've got to play to your strengths, haven't you, Pete? I think that's the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that I could say is very common amongst transport and fleet operators is that the culture isn't really considered or been nurtured. The culture hasn't really been nurtured. If an operator's doing the culture well, it's by accident. And if they're not doing it well, it's probably by accident as well. And actually just a little bit of forethought. So whilst you guys have been talking, I did a little bit of a Google, because culture is a really tricky thing because it's intangible. You can't touch it. It's like a shadow. You can't touch it. You can feel it, but you can't see it. Unless you look really hard and you see the way people are behaving. But essentially, a really good example of what a culture is it's the way we do things around here.
Yeah.
This is how we do stuff, and whether that's the way we interact with each other or it's the way we go about achieving our objectives, it's about beliefs, values, the norms that are shared amongst a group of people, and it'll be about the way they treat each other, and it'll be about the values. So one of the things that can drive culture in a business is about setting really strong goals and values, setting objectives, having a vision of what the business does and why it does it, and particularly having a why. Is something that I've spent a lot of time trying to nurture with Flagship. But essentially, if a driver goes, what do you do? What do you do for a day job? And a driver could go, well, I get in my truck and I deliver, I don't know, pharmaceuticals, refrigerated pharmaceuticals to people. That's one thing. If the driver actually goes, do you know what? I'm part of a really big infrastructure that enables the medical system to be able to save people's lives. Yeah. That's like far bigger thing. And essentially that comes from the leadership. It's about instilling that. I deliver the products that help build these amazing houses.
Yes, that's right.
I help deliver. I'm part of the infrastructure of the bigger goal of whatever it is you're trying to achieve. I think that is far more motivating for people.
Yeah, it's quite interesting you say that. If you ask drivers about the planning team, even sometimes it's an us and them. Yeah, not a team. There's not that culture there that we're doing this together. Yeah, it's a case of it's us and them. They don't know what they're doing, or etc. There's not that culture of teamwork. Of, like you say, this is the bigger picture. We're all here to do the same thing, really. Just because we're the drivers at the end of that. The culture should be all the way through, shouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit cliched now, but I can't remember the American president. But there's the story of the American president who was responsible for putting man on the moon. Well, not responsible, was he? He was part of the story, but he was visiting the space centre. I don't know which one it was, and he spoke to the janitor and asked the janitor, "What do you do? What's your job around here?" And he says, "I'm part of a team that's helping put man on the moon." And that's it's a bit cliched, isn't it? But it is true.
He had his part to play.
He had his part to play, And going back to the pharmacy, funny thing about that American company I worked for, we were actually invited to watch an operation. Mm-hmm. And what are we doing watching an operation? But it was to make us feel that we were a part of that. The part of the whole thing from, we genuinely believed that we were offering a service even though we were working for a big corporation, which was a great feeling, and that, you can't put a price on that, can you?
No, definitely not.
Yeah,
Definitely not.
I think it leads me really nicely on to a bit of a conclusion. Actually, talking about the culture, because I've been invited for the next quarter. I'm guest hosting on rebranding safety podcast, which is one of my friend's podcasts, James McPherson. If people are interested in safety, I really recommend having a listen to James' podcast. He actually he makes our YouTube figures look embarrassing. He's got something like 4,000 followers when we've not reached 1,000 yet, but he's very good at what he does, talking about safety and actually safety culture. And talking about safety culture is this thing around what's really happening against what is perceived to be happening. Yeah. And they talk about this thing called minding the gap, which is essentially what is the work that's done against the work that's perceived to be done. And when you look at that from a safety point of view, because in reality what happens is we're all human beings, the risk assessment says this is what's happening, and in reality
something completely different.
This corner's getting cut and that corner's getting cut, and it's about going, actually, what is the gap between what I perceive is or should be happening and what is really happening. And that's where the rubber hits the road for a leader, is actually really getting underneath and understanding, actually, I think this is how our business runs, but in reality the planners are arguing with the drivers, and the deliveries are all happening late, and it's because we're inefficient here and we're inefficient there, and what I think is happening and what actually happening are two different things, and I'm really going to get under the bonnet of it and try and work with people to make it better and deal with those challenges. So here we go, a bit of food for thought there, but yeah, a half dozen things to help retain drivers. What do we reckon?
Absolutely, I think that's terrific. So hopefully that solved one of your biggest headaches. Possibly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let us know how you get on.
Yeah, we hope you got some value out of that. We'd be interested in some feedback, see what people think. Whether you're a driver, whether you're a transport operator, whether you're a transport manager, drop some comments in, see what you think. Do you agree with our 6 things, or is there something we missed? Fantastic. Thank you for joining us. Hope you enjoyed it. Please do share it. Please do join the community over on Facebook, the Fleet Geeks community. We'd love to see you there. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Cheers. Bye.
I really hope you loved today's episode, and if you did, please make sure you subscribe and listen out for future episodes too. Please do share it across your social media channels. We hope to reach more and help more people. If you want to find out more about me, my name's Pete Rushmer. You'll find me across any social media channel and my business, Flagship Partners, and we're your partners in success across your business. Thank you. See you again soon.